My daughter-in-law told me flatly, "You're just an old burden, and I don't want you here while I'm expecting." My son agreed and suggested I move out, so I did. But the next morning, their landlord knocked, and whatever he said had them calling me nonstop. I'm 65 now, but last year, at 64, I was living in a converted garage at my son Brian's house. Yeah, you heard that right, a garage. Not exactly the golden years I'd pictured, but I was there because I'd sold my beautiful 3-bedroom home to help Brian and his wife, Chelsea, buy their first house. "It's temporary, Mom," Brian had promised, his eyes earnest, "just until we get on our feet." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I'd raised him as a single mom after his dad walked out when he was just a kid. 2 jobs, endless nights awake worrying about bills, sacrificing my own dreams to give him a shot at his. So when he needed help with the down payment, I didn't hesitate. I handed over $40,000 from my retirement savings, packed up my life, and moved into their garage. For 6 months, I paid them rent. I cooked their dinners, folded their laundry, even helped Brian wire the garage and lay the flooring to make it livable. I picked up those skills over 30 years helping my late husband with home projects. I thought I was being useful, part of their family, but Chelsea's pregnancy was tough, and I could see her patience with me wearing thin. Still, I kept my head down, tried to stay out of her way. I thought I was helping. Turns out, I was just being used. The day it all fell apart, I was in their kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. Chelsea was scrolling on her phone, not even looking at me, when she dropped the bomb. "I don't want a useless old woman here while I'm pregnant," she said, her voice cold as ice. My hands froze on the cutting board. I looked at Brian, my boy, waiting for him to say something, anything. Instead, he nodded. "You should find a new place to live, Mom," he said, like he was telling me the forecast called for rain. Something inside me broke right then, like a glass hitting concrete, shattered. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. Proud, my voice didn't waver. Chelsea finally looked up, her eyes hard. "That's not really our problem, Dorothy. We need the space for the baby's nursery." Brian shifted, uncomfortable, but he didn't back down. "There are senior communities, Mom. Nice places. You'll meet people your own age, like 64 was 1 foot in the grave, and I needed to be shipped off to some retirement village to knit with strangers. I'd raised Brian alone, worked myself to the bone to give him a life better than the one I had. And this was my thank you, tossed out like an old couch they didn't need anymore. I could have screamed, cried, begged, but here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. You learn to play your cards close, and I had cards they didn't even know existed. "Fine," I said, calm as could be. "I'll be out by the weekend." Chelsea smirked, thinking she'd won. Brian looked relieved, like he'd checked a box on his to-do list. Neither of them saw the tiny smile tugging at my lips as I walked back to the garage. 3 days later, I signed a lease on a cozy downtown apartment. Nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom with big windows and enough space for my books and my favorite armchair, mine. When the moving truck pulled up, Brian and Chelsea's jaws hit the floor. "You found a place that fast?" Brian asked, stunned. "Amazing what you can do when you're motivated," I replied, my voice sweet as pie. They didn't know I'd been planning my escape since Chelsea started treating me like a help. This apartment wasn't just a backup plan, it was an upgrade. As I packed my few belongings, I caught Chelsea watching from the kitchen window, her face twisted with something that looked like regret. "Too late, sweetheart." Brian tried one last time as I climbed into my car. "Mom, maybe we were hasty. If you want to stay?" I cut him off, my voice sugar-coated firm. "No thank you, dear. You made your position clear. I wouldn't want to be a burden." The guilt was eating him alive. I could see it in his eyes. Good, let him sit with it. My new place was everything their garage wasn't. Bright, clean, quiet. No more tiptoeing around Chelsea's moods or pretending I didn't hear her bad-mouthing me to her friends. I was unpacking books when my phone rang. "Dorothy Mitchell, this is Sarah Chen from Hudson Properties. Your references checked out perfectly. Mr. Hudson is thrilled to have you as our property manager." I smiled, settling into my armchair. "Wonderful. When does he want to start inspections?" "Tomorrow, if you're available. He's particularly interested in 1247 Maple Street." My heart did a little flip. 1247 Maple Street, Brian and Chelsea's address. "Oh, yes," I said, my voice steady as steel. "I'm very familiar with that property." I poured myself a glass of wine that night and raised it to my reflection in the window. "Here's to new beginnings," I toasted. See, what Brian and Chelsea didn't know was that I'd been talking to Will Hudson for weeks. He's a property developer with big plans to turn their neighborhood into an upscale community. When I mentioned my situation, offhand of course, he was all ears. "That's a prime location," he'd said about their house. I didn't lie, but I might have mentioned the garage conversion wasn't exactly up to code. No permits, shoddy work, things I'd helped Brian with, thinking I was helping my family. Will offered me a job as a property inspector, decent pay, flexible hours, and a chance to use my knowledge of the neighborhood. I took it, and I slept soundly in my own bed that night, knowing tomorrow would be interesting. The next morning, I met Will at a coffee shop near Brian's house. He was exactly what I'd pictured. Mid-40s, sharp suit, confident smile. "Dorothy, pleasure to meet you," he said, shaking my hand. We talked about his vision, renovating houses, flipping them, or turning them into high-end rentals. Property values would skyrocket. Great for sellers, not so great for folks who couldn't afford the new taxes. "Now, about 1247 Maple Street," he said, pulling up photos on his tablet. "You mentioned the owners might be interested in selling." I sipped my coffee, choosing my words carefully. "They're young, first-time homeowners, financially stretched. The property needs work. Unpermitted garage conversion for starters." Will nodded, making notes. "Perfect. I'd like to make them an offer today. Cash. Quick closing." 2 hours later, I was walking up Brian and Chelsea's driveway, clipboard in hand, behind Will Hudson. Through the window, I saw Chelsea's shocked face. Brian answered the door, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Can I help you?" he asked. Will handed him a business card. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Will Hudson, Hudson Properties. This is Dorothy, my property assessment consultant." Brian's eyes lit to me, confusion turning to horror as he realized who I was. "We'd like to discuss a business proposition," Will said smoothly. "May we come in?" The look on Brian's face when he put it together was almost funny. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Hello, Brian," I said, all professional politeness. "Mr. Hudson has an interesting proposal." Chelsea waddled in, her pregnant belly slowing her down, and went pale when she saw me. "What is she doing here?" she demanded. "Dorothy is my mother-in-law," she told Will, her voice tight. "Was," I corrected softly. "I was asked to find my own place, remember?" Will caught the tension, but stayed professional. "Perhaps we should sit down." In their living room, the same room where Chelsea called me useless 4 days ago, Will laid out his offer. $450,000 cash for their house, closing in 30 days. They'd paid $380,000 with my help 18 months ago. Chelsea gasped. Brian stammered, "That's generous, but we're not looking to sell." Will nodded. "I understand, but this block is set for redevelopment. New sewage, updated electrical, fiber optics. Construction will be disruptive, and our assessment suggests unpermitted modifications, like your garage conversion. If the city finds those during our permits process, they'll require full inspections." You could see the panic sinking in. Construction meant chaos, noise, dust, blocked driveways, and unpermitted work that could cost thousands to fix. Will gave them until Friday to decide. 5 days to either scrape together the money for repairs or take his offer and run. As we left, I couldn't resist a parting shot. "Take care, you two," I said warmly. "I hope everything works out." My phone blew up before I got to my car. Brian, then Chelsea, then Brian again. I let them go to voicemail. When I finally answered, Brian was frantic. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" "Language, Brian," I said calmly. "I thought I wasn't your concern anymore." He rambled about Will tearing up their neighborhood. "Mr. Hudson's improving it," I corrected. "Property values will go up. Good for homeowners who want to sell." "We don't want to sell," he shouted. "With my money," I reminded him. $40,000 of my retirement savings. Silence. Then, "Mom, I know we hurt you." "Hurt?" I laughed, and it wasn't kind. "Hurt implies an accident. You chose to throw me out when I became inconvenient." An hour later, Chelsea was at my door, mascara running down her face. "Please, I'm sorry." I was stressed about the baby. I didn't budge. "You called me useless, Chelsea. I sold my home for you, and you treated me like a burden." She begged, but I held firm. Family doesn't throw each other away. You made sure I knew I wasn't family. The next day, I got a call from Will. Brian and Chelsea wanted a meeting asking about payment plans for the code violations. They can't afford the $8,000 up front, he said. I stirred honey into my tea, savoring the irony. "Family helps family, Mr. Hudson, but only when it's mutual." They made their position clear. He gave them the weekend to decide. Then things took a turn. Frank Morrison, Chelsea's dad, a retired city council member, filed a complaint against Hudson Properties, claiming we were intimidating residents. The city launched an investigation, and I was called in for an interview. Detective Sarah Chen was sharp, her eyes missing nothing. "Mrs. Mitchell, you recommended your son's property for acquisition after being asked to move out." I didn't flinch. I identified it as a property that would benefit from improvement. I'd spent 6 weeks trying to fix their code violations before they kicked me out. Hudson Properties was coming either way. I just provided facts. The investigation closed 3 days later. Frank withdrew his complaint after a conversation with Chelsea. That afternoon, Brian and Chelsea showed up at my door broken. "We owe you apologies," Brian said. "We threw you away," Chelsea whispered. I looked at them, my son and his wife, and felt the weight of their regret. "Yes," I said simply. "You did." They asked for forgiveness. "I can forgive you," I said, "but I can't forget what you showed me about who you are." They wanted to make it right, but they didn't know how. "You can't fix it," I told them, "but you can learn from it. Think about what kind of family you want to be." They sold the house to Will for $450,000, made a $60,000 profit, and bought a smaller place they could actually afford. Chelsea had a healthy baby girl named Dorothy. It took 6 months for us to have dinner together again. Not because I was punishing them, but because we had to rebuild from scratch. Today, our relationship is smaller but stronger. Chelsea learned actions have consequences. Brian learned I won't always fix his messes. And me? I learned that being family means demanding respect, not just giving it. The baby's first word was Gamma, reaching for me across her high chair. I cried happy tears, knowing she'll grow up in a family that's learned to value each other. Sometimes the best revenge is refusing to be anyone's victim. Thanks for listening. Drop your story